it's so easy these days to live not being present, right? We've got our phones, we've got distractions, we've got our thoughts. There's so many things that pull us away from this present moment. And so when we're grounded in the present moment, we're able to really integrate our system to this moment and not be scattered all over the place, to be where your feet are. Hi friends, welcome back. So today we are talking about finding our authentic self and really connecting with the real you. Now these days it's so easy to get caught up in life and caught up in all the different roles that we play that sometimes you might have a moment where you just kind of feel like, who am I, right? And you might remember, dreams or aspirations that you've had in the past that you feel so disconnected from. Like, how did your dreams die? And the kind of person you thought you would become feels like someone completely different than who you are today. And so today we're going to talk about really what is your authentic self, and then what blocks us from really feeling connected to our authentic self and finding that real you to live in every day. And then we're going to move into how do we connect with our authentic self. This is a really important subject matter, and you'd be surprised how many people end up in therapy. And really one of the reasons that they're there, and it might be the most pressing reason that they're there, is that they just feel disconnected from themselves. And I had a moment about 3.5 years ago where I remember it was like at the end of a long work day and I'm driving home and I realized that my favorite things to do, which are cooking, running, and writing, those are those things that when I'm doing them, I feel like I get into this flow state and I'm just enjoying life. I feel like I'm really myself. And I had this moment where I was like, I haven't done any of those things in so long. Like, I can't remember the last time that I just cooked for fun or that I went on a run just to enjoy being outside and moving my body, and that I sat down to write just because I love to write and be creative. And I remember on this drive home just having tears start to come and having this feeling of disconnection. And the other thing that I really love to do is really working one-on-one with others in a helping way. So in the past, this was, being a personal trainer or, as a mother, just being there with another, with my kids and nurturing them and taking care of them. And so this one-on-one helping others is another thing. And at the time, I wasn't doing any of that. And so for me, it was a bit of a wake-up call, and it was kind of one part of many different things that got me to really change what I'm doing, go back to school, change my career, change my focus, to really start to try to line up my goals with really who I am, who my authentic, real self is, and what makes me feel the most alive and the most present, right? And just on track with really my mission in life. And so that was kind of my story that has gotten me on this path of getting closer to really living in my truth every single day. So what is our authentic self? So there's many different ways to describe this feeling of being in tune with yourself, right? And so some call it like the core of your person. So this is the part of you that when you access it, you're unclouded by defenses and negative emotions. So when we get defensive and negative emotions come in, there's all these things that come in and block our authentic self. So that core of who we are gets really clouded. And this is like, I always talk about the radiance that we have inside of us. And I really think that the radiance that we have is like in our authentic self. So when we're living in authenticity, our radiance is really shining through. And so these defense mechanisms and negative emotions come in and really block that authentic self. Our authentic self has also been described as like a state where we can access compassion, curiosity, confidence, social engagement, and enjoyment. And so any of you who are familiar with polyvagal theory are probably thinking, oh, like when we're in a ventral vagal state, right? A green state where our nervous system is settled and we're able to be in this present moment. When we're in this present moment and we're not worried about potential threats or thinking about stressful things, then we're able to feel connected. We're able to have that curiosity and that confidence in ourselves. Some might call it a flow state, which is kind of how I think of these things that I love to do, these talents that I have when I'm immersed in it, right? A flow state is this idea of feeling fully immersed in what you're doing, being fully present, having this just total enjoyment in this experience of what you're doing, and almost like this sense of synergy of between yourself, all the different parts of your brain, your body, and then whatever this activity is that you're doing. So it could be that you're doing something physical, like you're running, and you just kind of get into this flow state where it's just so enjoyable. Or, I mean, I've gotten into flow state when I'm cooking before, where I'm just being creative and I'm like coming up with ideas on the spot and just going with it. And there's just this motion and this synergy about it. And then for me, writing is one where I really can get into a flow state where you're not even sure where it's coming from, right? You're almost just like this conduit, and it's such an enjoyable feeling. And then most recently, as I've been, working as a mental health professional, working with clients, having that experience a few times so far where it's like, oh, okay, I feel like I'm getting into this flow as I'm working with this person, and we're doing things, we're renegotiating their trauma, and we're doing things to help move them forward in life. So when we're in that flow state, we really are connecting and living from our authentic self. When we're in that state of like living as our authentic self, self-awareness is really high, right? And we think about the opposite of that is like when you're really not self-aware and you're kind of, not paying attention or seeing yourself clearly would be kind of like the opposite of being living with this authentic connection to ourselves. So how do we have a high level of self-awareness? Well, it's really about being tuned in to our inner experience. This requires that we kind of slow down and pay attention to our inner experience. Another way that your authentic self can be described is a state of psychological flexibility. This comes from Stephen Hayes and his acceptance and commitment therapy. But this idea of having the ability to think and feel with openness. So this flexibility, having the ability to take in new information, new experiences, and kind of like roll with it. And the opposite of that psychological flexibility is being really rigid. And we all know people who are super rigid in how they approach the world and how things have to be a certain way. And, then we kind of get into personality disorders when there's just this real rigidity about how they interact. And so the opposite of that is this psychological flexibility. And so the more in tune we are with our inner world, the more we're able to have psychological flexibility because we're not being threatened, right? If you think about it, if you're grounded in your authentic self, and you're in tune with that, you can be flexible and not feel like you're going to get knocked over or lose who you are, right? Because you're grounded in it. And so another way to look at this authentic self, this version of yourself where you just feel at peace with who you are, is integration. And so this is something that I really use a lot when I think about mental health and being psychologically healthy. And this is having integration with our brain, body, emotions, thoughts. And so again, how do we have integration? We have awareness. So it starts with, being aware of what am I feeling right now? What am I thinking about, right? Are these thoughts, constructive and positive? Or am I falling into some cognitive distortions, right? Am I getting into some faulty thinking patterns, some negative thinking patterns? and then tying that with behaviors, right? Like, what am I doing right now to produce these thoughts that are then producing these emotions, and seeing how they're all connected? And so having this integration with all the different parts of you really allows this authentic self to come forward. So hopefully you're getting a little pumped up about this idea of like, yes, number one, you do have an authentic self. Like there is a real authentic human being inside of you. And even if you feel so detached from that idea, right? Maybe you feel like an imposter, or maybe you just feel confused. Like, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I'm supposed to be, right? Even if you have just this disconnection right now from this idea of like being grounded in your authentic self, it's incredibly possible. Like it's already inside of you. And so, well, let's talk about what blocks that access to our authentic self. And there's so many things in this world today. It's almost like designed to block us from our radiance, from our authentic self. And that's why, we tune into podcasts like this and we do the work of self-development so that we can continue to strive for that connection to our authentic self. And that's why you're here listening today, is because you're like, I know it's in there. Like, I want to do this. And so the first thing that really can block us from our authentic self and from our radiance is a dysregulated nervous system. And this is something I talk about a lot. And as I am being trained in somatic work, our nervous system, having our body still stuck in moments and situations of trauma, experiencing overwhelm. If we've experienced overwhelm at any time in our life, as humans, the way that our sophisticated brains work, we typically will block our completion of a survival response. And so what does that really mean for us? We have nervous systems that are dysregulated, that are in the red, and that are really sensing or feeling danger when we're safe. And so the modern experience of this really, stress, anxiety, depression being when your nervous system's so overwhelmed that it kind of goes into like a freeze state. So it's so common for us in this modern world to live with nervous system dysregulation. And so when our nervous system is dysregulated, which means our physical body thinks that it's in danger, this has a profound impact on our thoughts, on our emotions, on our psychological state. And when all of this noise is happening in our system, it's impossible to feel connected and tuned in to our authentic self, right? Because this survival response is taking precedence. This survival response has to be attended to before we can then, reach a state of, like we talked about, more that relaxation and connection to connect with that authentic self. Paying attention to your nervous system and really working on finding regulation in your nervous system is probably the most powerful thing that you can do in taking steps towards connecting with your authentic self. So one of the ways that we can do that is to be present. And so this is really our second way that we kind of are blocking our authentic self, is by not being present. And so what do I mean by that? It's so easy these days to live not being present, right? We've got our phones, we've got distractions, we've got our thoughts. There's so many things that pull us away from this present moment. And so when we're grounded in the present moment, we're able to really integrate our system to this moment and not be scattered all over the place. We all know that experience of stress when, let's say, you're driving to work and your thoughts are on a problem, right? And so your thoughts are spinning out about a problem that you have to deal with, and these thoughts are connected to your emotions. now your emotions are starting to get really activated and stirred up in a negative way based on your thoughts as you're just driving to work, right? So everything that happens internally is connected to your ability to really even be aware of where you are. And this is one of, as we get into like, well, how do I, move through all these blocks and connect with my authentic self? And one of them is really finding ways to be present, to be where your feet are. That's a little quote that we have in the industry of just like, are you where your feet are? Like, okay, my feet are right here. I'm here in this room, right? And bringing yourself to the present moment pulls you away from all of these places that you can go in your inner world that really bring up activation, can really get your system dysregulated, and allows your body and your nervous system to feel like you're in a threatened position when you're not, right? When it's safe right here. But if mentally you're having a confrontation with your boss or your partner and you're emotionally reacting inside, but you're driving to work, right? You're safe, you're in your car, you're fine. Your system, your body doesn't know you're fine. Your body is experiencing the conflict that you're going over in your mind. So being able to really be grounded and connected to the present moment where you are right now is a great way to start really connecting with your authentic self. So having low self-awareness and really ignoring your gut instincts and your impulses, like your healthy impulses, is another way that we block our authentic self. And so a great example of that is like that little voice that came up for me that was like, hey, you haven't done any of the things you love to do in so long. I can't even remember the last time you did these things that you're passionate about. And it was just this like my gut, right? Like this little voice inside of me of like, hey, and we all have that little voice that will sometimes kind of hype up. And maybe it'll be like, hey, you really need to get a new job, right? Or, hey, the relationship you're in is not healthy. It's not leading you down the path that you need to go, right? Or, hey, you haven't taken action on this thing that's going to help propel you in life, right? And so when we suppress our instincts and we suppress our, just that little voice that's inside of us that wants to guide us, we reduce our self-awareness, right? We have to. And this is where a lot of us can get into using substance, right? Because when the little voice inside of you is telling you like, hey, take action, end this negative relationship, but you're not ready to do that, we numb ourselves with substance to suppress our self-awareness, right? If I can become a little numb, I can be less aware of this inner conflict. I can kind of remove myself from it, even though it's still happening, I'm still living it, right? This is how we really decrease our self-awareness and block our authentic self. So being rigid and psychologically closed off, right? Being closed to the present moment, being closed to new things, new ideas, right? This is another way that we're really blocking access to our authentic self. So overall, just being disconnected from our body, mind, spirit, and emotions, being disconnected from our inner experience and our nervous system really makes it hard to connect with our authentic self. So if you think about it, our authentic self is made up of all the pieces of us. And so the more that we explore, the more that we are in touch with all of these different wonderful parts of us, the more we're getting closer to accessing our authentic self and continuing to live in our authentic self. Because you might have these moments where you're like, oh, that felt really good. That felt really genuine. But then we kind of go back to getting blocked, right? So it's about grabbing onto those moments and then allowing them to last and then making that your new normal to really live in that state of connection with your deepest self. Okay, so how do we do it? agree that you have an authentic self. You know it's in there. You've had flashes of it. You can kind of see different ways that you've been blocking it, right? So now what do? You're ready. You're ready to connect with your authentic self and to become more who you were meant to be. So the very first thing is really starting with our physical body. And this is something that science is really reinforcing more and more, is how, modern man is so disconnected from our physical body. And the physical body has such a huge impact on our mental, emotional, spiritual health. And so starting with creating a connection to your physical body. And this is what we do to regulate our nervous system, right? And so if we look into the brain, this is the lower part of our brain, more of our reptilian brain, our brain stem, our autonomic nervous system that's so connected with our experience, but it's all in this body that we largely ignore as modern man. And so wanting to connect with our authentic self and have this integration, we start by connecting to our body. And so this very simply connecting to your felt sense. And so really paying attention, and you can do, meditation is so popular and we know to do things for mindfulness. Well, this is essentially this idea of pausing, and we call it sensing into your body. Like, what am I feeling in my body right now? And just focusing your thoughts. So we're taking the cortex, like the thinking part of our brain, and we're directing it to our physical body, which really, what are we doing? We're creating integration between the top part of our brain and the brain stem, right? When we're creating these neural pathways of integration and connection. And so it's such a powerful thing, and it seems very simple, and it's almost like we don't have time for that. And you can see how, living in this modern world has really just continues to pull us away from a connection to our physical body. And so that just being the first step, taking time to really just pay attention to how your body feels and feeling into all of the different parts of your body, your limbs, your core, all of it, paying attention to it. And then noticing as you feel different sensations, paying attention to them, noticing what feels pleasant, what feels unpleasant, noticing contraction, feelings of tightness, feelings of heaviness, and then areas in your body where you feel expanded and you feel light, right? And really throughout your day, as you experience emotions throughout your day, asking yourself, where do I feel that in my body? Because every single emotion that you feel, that you notice, it's being experienced in your body. And so when you take that time to try to find it, to pay attention, to notice it, you're really doing this deep integration in your brain, which is one of the best things that you can do for your nervous system, and ultimately one of the best things you can do for finding that authentic self, living as the real you, and not this disjointed, disconnected, stressed out, anxious version of yourself. So another thing that we do to really kind of make that connection, not only to our body and our nervous system, but to the present moment, is grounding. And so grounding it's such a powerful thing. And it's very, very simple. We almost want to just disregard it because it's just too easy. But as I sit here, pushing my feet into the ground, and wherever you are, if you push your heels into the ground right now and just notice that the ground is stable underneath your feet. If you're standing, notice gravity on you, gravity pushing down through your heels. If you're sitting, noticing how gravity feels on your sit bones, noticing how the chair's supporting you. Again, this just sounds very simple and almost like, what are we doing here? But we're connecting our body, the thinking part of our brain, to our body's experience in the present moment. And this is helping us with this integration and helping us with being in this present moment, letting our nervous system know that we're safe right now. So the next step to that is called orienting. And this is what all animals do in the wild. We do this. If you're going on a hike and you're walking through the woods and you hear something, you're going to look around, right? You're going to orient. And so this is another simple thing we do. As you've grounded your feet, you're noticing gravity, you're just taking in your surroundings and looking, allowing that mammal, that human animal that you live in, to really take in your environment. And what is the body doing? The nervous system is scanning for danger. It's taking in the space between me and the wall, between me and the camera, right? Me and the ceiling. And doing this is giving a message to my nervous system that I'm safe right now. I know where I am in time and space. I'm grounded. I feel gravity. And you can just feel like a release in your nervous system. And so as we're doing this, we're really clearing out a lot of that noise and a lot of those things that are blocking us from our authentic self. And another really cool thing about this is because our body and our nervous system is so connected to our emotional state, when we feel overwhelming emotions, or maybe you're just having a bad day and you just kind of can't shake this negative feeling, when we do these very simple grounding and orienting experiences and then just paying attention to our body has such a powerful way of calming our emotions. And as we tune into our body, we can access the shifts. And so what I mean by that is when we are cut off from our body, we often get stuck in patterns. But when we start to bring the body back into our awareness, we start to activate and connect, our thinking brain with our brainstem and make that integration, we find how fluid and how flexible our different states of being can be, from feeling contracted and feeling some stress to, oh, now I'm actually feeling kind of good. And a lot of that happens just by paying attention to this big part of you, this body and this nervous system that we just like to ignore. And so it's really cool, especially when you might feel like, I felt depressed for so long or for so many years. I felt stressed out for so many years. Like it's such a big thing that doesn't shift and move and get smaller. But when we start with the body and we take it from here, we find like, oh, it can shift. Oh, it can change. So it's super powerful. But again, I know it seems really easy and simple, which it is, but it's incredibly powerful. So this idea of learning to be here in the present moment, in our body, grounded and oriented, really, again, honoring your gut instincts. If you have a voice that comes up for you like I did, where it's like, hey, what are you doing with your life? Like you're not doing the thing you're most passionate about. Paying attention to that voice, honoring your gut instincts, because they're there to help guide you towards your authentic self. And then just making this conscious choice to really live in your truth. So I hope this content has been helpful, and hopefully you are inspired to pay more attention to your system, to your body, so that you can find that connection to your authentic self. Because when we are living more in the present moment, more in tune with our authentic self, just life is brighter. We are more engaged in it. We experience more connection, enjoyment, fulfillment in life, and we feel less of the negative stuff, right? Less of the stress, the anxiety, and the depression. So I wish you the best. Thank you so much for joining me today and for being on this self-development journey, because I know it's not an easy journey and you're doing it voluntarily, right? You're choosing to make yourself better every single day, and that is an awesome thing. Thank you so much. If you like, please subscribe, drop me a comment, and I will be back next week with more content.